My stepchildren told me I was just a guest in their lives and they didn't owe me respect. So I canceled the family vacation, stopped paying for food, and took back the keys to the car I bought them. Only then did they realize the weight of their words. Subscribe and leave your story in the comments. Time to jump right in. My name is Daniel. I am 42 years old, a construction foreman by trade, a man whose hands are carved by calluses, and whose back has bent under the weight of steel and timber for more years than I care to count. All my life, I believed something simple, something stubborn, that respect could be earned the way a man earns his pay. If you give enough, your time, your sweat, your money, your patience, if you pour yourself dry into other people, eventually they will look at you with gratitude. They will see you as indispensable. They will give you the place you deserve. That was the creed I lived by. I thought I could buy my way into a family with sacrifices that would speak louder than blood. I thought love and labor could bind strangers into kin. I thought wrong. 7 years ago, I met Laura. She was 36 then, divorced, carrying 3 children like anchors around her wrists. Mason was 14, already taller than her, already hardened into silence. Chloe was 12, sharp-eyed and restless, a girl who clung to her phone and her mother's shadow. Adam was 9, still young enough to smile but old enough to understand the absence of his father. They lived in a small apartment on the edge of town, a place that seemed more like a holding cell than a home. The walls were the color of stale cigarettes, the windows sealed shut with layers of paint, the floorboards warped from water damage that no landlord ever repaired. Their father, Laura's ex-husband, was a ghost in their lives. He appeared when it suited him, only to vanish again. He made promises he never kept, mailed checks that never came, offered apologies that grew emptier each year. The children had learned to expect nothing from him, though they still carried his name like a chain they couldn't break. At that time, I was renting a modest place of my own. Nothing special, but it was steady. I had been saving toward the dream of buying my own house, a place built to last, something I could leave behind when my working years were over. Meeting Laura changed the shape of that dream. Instead of picturing quiet evenings alone, I began to imagine noise, children's voices echoing down hallways, dinners at a long table, laughter spilling out into the yard. I believed I had been handed a chance not just to build walls and roofs for others, but to build something of my own, a family. After a year of dating, I made the proposal. Not a proposal of marriage, not yet. A proposal of permanence. I told Laura that I wanted us under one roof, that I wanted her children to have stability, that I wanted to carry them out of that suffocating apartment and into a home where each of them could breathe. I suggested buying a larger house, a place that could fit all of us without anyone feeling like a guest. She hesitated at first. She said she didn't want to burden me, that it was too much responsibility, that her kids might never accept another man. I brushed aside her doubts. Responsibility was the one thing I knew how to shoulder. I had been carrying weight all my life. Steel beams, scaffolding, cement bags heavier than some men could lift. Compared to that, carrying a family seemed easy. Compared to that, love felt light. So I went ahead. I chose the house myself. A 2-story place on the outskirts of town, with a wide backyard and enough rooms for each child to finally claim a space of their own. I covered the down payment, signed the mortgage papers, and threw myself into renovations with the same grit I brought to every job site. Nights and weekends I stripped wallpaper, replaced old wiring, rebuilt the porch, painted the walls. Laura helped when she could. Chores, cooking, running errands. But the heavy lifting was mine. Always mine. The day we moved in, the kids raced through the hallways like they had been set free from prison. Mason claimed the biggest bedroom upstairs. Chloe decorated her walls with posters and mirrors. Adam filled his shelves with action figures, arranging them like soldiers standing guard. In the backyard, they chased each other in circles until the grass bent under their shoes. Their laughter filled the air, bright and wild, and I believed, God help me, I truly believed, that I had done something good. That night, as we sat in the new living room surrounded by boxes, Laura leaned against me and whispered, "We're a team now." Her words sank deep into me, sweeter than any vow. I looked at her children, their faces glowing in the lamplight, and I thought, yes, This is it. This is what all the years of sweat and saving were for. In those early days, I told myself I had finally built something that would last longer than concrete. I thought love and effort were cement, binding us together. I didn't notice the cracks forming beneath the surface. Not yet. I mistook excitement for acceptance, dependence for respect. I worked my job during the day, managed the house in the evenings, and still found the strength to be present with them. I fixed Mason's bike when the chain snapped. I helped Chloe with her math homework. I read bedtime stories to Adam until his eyelids drooped. Every act felt like an investment, a deposit in the bank of family, a future reward of loyalty and belonging. And for a while, it seemed to work. The children smiled at me, thanked me, even hugged me. Laura kissed me at the doorway each morning when I left for work. I went to bed each night believing I had finally escaped the curse of loneliness. But belief is fragile, and respect is not built by love alone. Even then, in those early years, there were moments that should have warned me. Mason's silence wasn't just shyness. It was disdain. Chloe's eye rolls weren't just a phase, they were rejection in training. Adam's habit of calling me Daniel instead of Dad wasn't just a child's formality. It was a line he would never cross. I didn't see it then, or maybe I saw it and chose to blind myself, because I wanted so badly to believe. I told myself I had become their father. I told myself that money and effort had earned me a seat at their table. I told myself I belonged. The truth, which I would only learn much later, was harsher. I had bought the house, but I had not bought their respect. I had built the walls, but they would never let me inside. At first, it looked like I had pulled off the impossible. For 2 years, maybe 3, life felt almost like the picture I had carried in my head. The house buzzed with routine. School runs in the morning, family dinners at night, weekends in the yard. I woke before dawn to put in 10-hour shifts at the site, then came home to coach homework sessions at the kitchen table. When the bikes broke, I fixed them. When the pipes leaked, I handled it. When bills piled up, they vanished because I paid them. I thought I was proving myself, day after day. I thought consistency would turn me into something permanent in their eyes. Mason was tall by then, quiet but brooding. His voice deepening into a man's while his manners regressed into silence. Chloe grew sharper, prettier, restless like her mother. Her eyes always darting between me and her friends as if I were an embarrassment she had to justify. Adam clung to childhood, but even he began to pull away, choosing screens over stories, solitude over my company. Still, I poured myself in. I paid for Chloe's dance academy, monthly fees that swallowed whole chunks of my paycheck. I hired Adam a tutor when his grades slipped, because I wanted him to have chances I never did. When Mason turned 16, I found him a used car, nothing fancy, but safe, reliable, something to give him independence. I told myself these gestures mattered, that love disguised as sacrifice would eventually be recognized. But slowly, their attitudes shifted. Mason stopped thanking me for rides, stopped acknowledging me at all. He would slam the door of the car without a word, eyes fixed on his phone, treating me like a chauffeur. Chloe began to roll her eyes whenever I offered advice, her tone dripping with disdain whenever she answered me. Adam started calling me Daniel again, not even pretending to try, Dad. Each small rejection landed like a nail in the coffin I refused to admit was being built. When I brought this up to Laura, she always had excuses ready. They're teenagers. They're adjusting. They've been through a divorce. Give them time. Her words softened the blows, but her silence at the table whenever the children dismissed me spoke louder. She let them treat me as a background figure, a man who existed only for convenience. But I kept pushing forward. I believed marriage would change things. I thought that standing before a minister, saying vows, exchanging rings, and binding ourselves legally would solidify what love alone had not. If Laura and I were married, if the children saw me standing at her side, surely they would finally accept me as family. The wedding was modest, just a small gathering, no frills. Laura looked radiant that day, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I had finally won. I thought her children would look at me differently, respect me as the man who chose to stand with their mother when their father had abandoned them. But reality is not merciful. It happened only weeks later. I came home early from work one afternoon, stepping into the quiet of the house. Chloe was in the kitchen with one of her friends, their voices carrying through the hallway. I didn't mean to listen. I shouldn't have listened. But I froze when I heard my name. Her friend must have asked something about me. Maybe about the wedding, because Chloe's voice rang clear. Mom married Daniel because he pays for everything. He's not family. Those words cut deeper than any insult Mason had ever muttered. Deeper than Adam's refusal to call me dad. Because they were true, at least in her eyes. To her, I wasn't a father, not even a stepfather. I was a wallet, a convenience sponsor. I stood in the doorway, invisible, listening to them laugh. My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. I had thought marriage would crown me with legitimacy. Instead, it stripped me bare. Even as Laura's husband, I was nothing more than a provider. That evening, I said nothing. Laura noticed my silence, asked if I was tired. I nodded. I didn't tell her what I'd overheard, because I already knew the answer she would give. She's just a teenager. She didn't mean it. But I knew better. Children may exaggerate, but in their cruelty lies the truth they dare not speak to your face. From that day forward, I started to see every small gesture differently. Mason's smirk wasn't laziness. It was contempt. Chloe's eye rolls weren't immaturity. They were disdain sharpened into habit. Adam's formality wasn't innocent. It was a deliberate refusal to give me the place I thought I had earned. I began to feel like a stranger in my own house. My labor kept the lights on. My money filled the fridge. My sweat built the very walls around them. But my presence was nothing more than background noise. They spoke over me, around me, but never to me. Laura insisted everything was fine. She urged me not to take it personally. But I couldn't ignore the weight of her silence when disrespect unfolded in front of her. She never demanded they acknowledge me. She never corrected them when they dismissed me. Her love for me was private, quiet, but in public, in front of her children. She let me be diminished. And so the cracks widened. At dinner, I would sit at the head of the table, the supposed place of authority, while Mason and Chloe traded jokes with their mother as though I weren't there. Adam would shovel food into his mouth without looking at me. If I asked about their days, the answers were curt, one-word replies. If I offered advice, they turned to Laura, waiting for her approval before responding. My voice had no weight. I was a ghost at my own table. The play area I had built in the backyard, with my hands blistered from the work, sat and used. The car I had bought Mason carried him away from me, not toward me. The dance classes I paid for became occasions where Chloe bragged to her friends about her mother's sacrifices, never once mentioning mine. I thought respect could be built like a house. I thought consistency and sacrifice would create a foundation too strong to deny. But what I was really building was a prison for myself, a structure of debt and obligation that they inhabited without gratitude. And still I stayed. Still I gave. Because I thought if I endured long enough, if I kept paying, kept showing up, kept sacrificing, one day they would see me for who I was. One day they would call me father. But deep down, I had already begged *N to hear the echo of Chloe's words. He's not family. That echo would only grow louder. The real breaking point didn't come in one sudden explosion. It built, slow and steady, like pressure behind a dam, every small slight pressing harder against the walls I had constructed around my patients. For years I told myself they were just kids, that one day they would grow, that the respect I had been denied would eventually arrive. But respect never came. Only contempt. The first fracture showed itself one night as I was passing by the hallway outside Mason's room. The door was cracked open, laughter spilling through like smoke. Mason was inside with Chloe and Adam. I shouldn't have lingered, but something in their tones stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't the kind of laughter that comes from joy. It was sharp, cruel, meant for someone else's expense. Me. Mason's voice carried, clear and cutting. He thinks he's our dad. Really, he just needs to know his place. The words hung in the air like poison. My heart thudded in my chest, and for a moment I prayed I had misheard. But then Chloe giggled. that mocking teenage laugh that slices deeper than any blade. Adam chimed in, agreeing with a tone of disdain I had never thought possible in the boy I had once carried on my shoulders. They laughed at me. They mocked the very role I had bled to earn. To them, I wasn't a father. I wasn't even a man worthy of respect. I was just a fool pretending to belong, a paycheck masquerading as family. That night, something inside me cracked. Not rage, not even sadness. It was colder than that. It was clarity. From that point forward, I started keeping records, not because I intended to justify myself to them, but because I needed to see with numbers and ink the scale of what I had poured into their lives. I gathered receipts, bills, contracts, bank statements. The total was staggering, nearly $400,000 over the years. $400,000 spent on groceries, tuition, braces, clothes, camps, vacations, cars. $400,000 poured into children who would never see me as more than an intruder. But the truth was never about money. It was about respect. And respect had been denied at every turn. The final blow came at the dinner table. We were seated as we always were. Me at the head, Laura beside me, the kids spread out across the table. The food was laid out, steam rising in the dim light, but the air was colder than ever. Mason had grown bolder with age, taller now, broader, his voice carrying the arrogance of a young man who thought he had nothing to fear. He looked me in the eye, not past me, not around me, but directly into me. And with a calmness that chilled my bones, he said, "You're just a guest here, not a dad. We don't owe you respect." Silence fell. My fork froze midway to my mouth. Chloe's lips curled into a smirk, and she nodded, as though Mason had voiced a truth they had all silently agreed upon. Adam, once the child I thought might accept me, muttered a quiet "yeah" under his breath, sealing the verdict. And Laura said nothing. She didn't defend me. She didn't scold them. She didn't slam her fist against the table and remind them that I was the man who kept a roof over their heads, the man who carried their futures on his back. She sat there, eyes lowered, as though silence were easier than justice. That silence was the loudest betrayal of all. I set my fork down. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't rise. I simply looked at them, one by one, and in that moment I knew. The family I thought I had built was nothing more than scaffolding, hollow and temporary, destined to collapse. That night, I made my decision. The next morning, I began dismantling everything I had built for them. I canceled the family vacation I had paid for months in advance. I took back the keys to Mason's car, the one I had bought with my own money. I stopped paying for Chloe's dance academy. I cut off Adam's tutoring. At the grocery store, I bought food only for myself. When the Wi-Fi bill came, I let it lapse. When the insurance notices arrived, I ignored them. For years, I had been their invisible backbone, carrying them without thanks. Now I stepped aside and let them feel the weight of their own words. The house fell into chaos. Mason raged when his car insurance lapsed, his voice breaking with fury. Chloe cried when she realized her classes had ended, her world of dance slipping through her fingers. Adam stared at me with wide eyes when the Wi-Fi went dark, disbelief etched into his young face. Laura pleaded, tried to negotiate, tried to soften me with excuses. "They're just kids. They didn't mean it. Don't punish them for words." But her pleas bounced off me like rain on stone. I had begged for respect for years, and she had answered with silence. Now I answered with silence of my own. They had told me I was a guest. Very well. Guests don't pay the bills. Guests don't fund futures. Guests don't sacrifice everything only to be spat on. For the first time in years, I slept soundly. The house buzzed with their complaints, their anger, their sudden desperation, but I felt nothing but clarity. The line had been drawn. The illusion was over. I had tried to be their father. I had failed, but I would not be their fool any longer. From the moment I stopped paying, the house began to rot from the inside. It didn't collapse all at once. It unraveled strand by strand, like a rope fraying under too much weight. Each week another thread snapped, and with each snap came a reminder that I had been the only one holding everything together. The Wi-Fi went first. It had been in my name, the payments drawn from my account. When the bill came and I ignored it, the connection flickered out like a dying pulse. Mason shouted from his room, stomping down the stairs with his laptop in hand, demanding to know why the service wasn't working. I told him to call the provider himself. His face twisted, as though the concept of taking responsibility were foreign, even insulting. Then came the car insurance. The used car I had given Mason sat idle in the driveway. The insurance lapsed, the registration expired. When he realized he couldn't drive without risk of tickets, his anger turned desperate. "You can't do this to me," he spat. I reminded him it wasn't me who had done this. It was him, when he looked me in the eye and stripped me of the title of father. His words had consequences, and now he was choking on them. Chloe's dance academy was next. The director called Laura when the monthly payment didn't arrive. Chloe cried, begged, promised she would do better if only I would reconsider. Her tears fell like acid, not because they carried remorse, but because they revealed just how dependent she had been on the very man she dismissed as not family. She didn't apologize. She just wanted the payments restored. Adam suffered quietly. He didn't rage like Mason, didn't sob like Chloe. He simply looked at me with eyes that asked why the world was suddenly harsher. He had been the youngest, the one I thought might see me differently. But even he had joined the chorus at that dinner table. His silence now was not innocence. It was guilt he didn't know how to voice. And Laura finally began to feel the weight of everything she had ignored. She tried to cover the bills herself, but her income was never enough. Groceries became thinner, the fridge emptier. The electricity warnings arrived in yellow envelopes. The mortgage notices, still in my name, stacked higher each week. She asked me to reconsider, begged me late at night, whispering that the kids were just confused, that they didn't mean what they said. But I had lived too long on excuses. Excuses had been the currency of that house, spent by everyone except me. And I was done paying. A few months later, the inevitable happened. She couldn't keep the house. The mortgage, the utilities, the endless expenses, all of it drowned her. She packed what little they could carry and moved herself and the children into her sister's cramped home across town. The house I had built, the house I had filled with my labor and my sweat, stood hollow, stripped of the family I had once thought it protected. When I left, I carried little. Just clothes, tools, a few keepsakes that mattered only to me. I found an apartment closer to the construction sites, small but clean, a place where silence wasn't poisoned with contempt. For the first time in years, I woke up without hearing doors slam, without feeling invisible at my own table. Relief washed over me. Not joy, not triumph, but relief. The way a man feels when a heavy weight is finally cut from his shoulders. The absence of their voices was not loneliness. It was freedom. I expected anger from them. I expected hatred. But what came was something sharper, regret. Mason tried calling, leaving messages that sounded more like demands than apologies. Chloe wrote me letters, weaving apologies into requests for money, as if the two were inseparable. Adam stayed silent, too proud or too ashamed to speak. Laura, once proud in her silence, now spoke endlessly, pleading for reconciliation, begging me to reconsider, reminding me of the years we had shared. But regret after betrayal is only noise. Cannot rebuild what was shattered. It cannot erase the words that were spoken with such conviction. You're just a guest. You're not our dad. In that apartment, I learned a truth that had taken me decades to face. Sometimes love is not enough. Sometimes sacrifice is not enough. Sometimes the only way to reclaim yourself is to walk away, to burn the bridge behind you, and let those on the other side learn to swim or drown. Months passed. The silence of my new life grew into something solid, something I could lean on. I worked, I slept, I ate alone. And then, slowly, something shifted. I met someone new. Not through force, not through searching. Just a simple encounter, ordinary and unplanned. She had no children, no baggage, no ghosts from a failed marriage. She saw me as I was, not as what I could provide. She valued my presence, not my wallet. For the first time, I felt seen, not as a placeholder, not as a bank account, but as a man. And in her eyes, I understood the mistake I had made with Laura and her children. I had believed respect could be bought with sacrifice. I had believed love would naturally breed loyalty. But respect cannot be bought. It must be freely given. And if it is withheld, no amount of sacrifice can force it into existence. Sometimes the most loving choice is not to stay. Sometimes the bravest act is to walk away, to choose yourself over those who bleed you dry. Laura and the kids still reach out from time to time. Their messages shift between anger and sorrow, between accusations and pleas. Mason rages that I abandoned him. Chloe insists she was too young to understand. Adam asks nothing, but his silence lingers like a wound. Laura says we could rebuild, start over, find our way back. But I have no desire to return to ashes. I gave everything I had to that family, and they buried me in contempt. I will not dig myself out just to lie down for them again. So I live my new life with clarity. I am no longer a ghost in my own home. I am no longer a man trying to buy respect that will never come. I am simply myself, free at last. And yet, some nights, the echoes return. Chloe's words to her friend, "Mom married Daniel because he pays for everything," play in my mind. Mason's declaration, "You're not a dad, you're just a guest," lingers like a scar. Laura's silence, the loudest betrayal of all, still stings. I wonder if I was wrong. I wonder if I should have stayed, swallowed the insults, and continued to pay for their futures, if only to keep the illusion of family alive. I wonder if walking away was cruelty disguised as strength. But then I remember the truth. Love without respect is slavery. And I had been a slave long enough. So I leave you with this question, the same one that haunts me. Was I wrong to walk away, to choose myself after years of being nothing but a guest in my own house? Or was it the only choice left for a man who finally understood that respect is not earned by sacrifice? It is either given freely, or it does not exist at all.